Home the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's kicking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Move for the win. Team Canada. Darren Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Canada and the rest of the world. You're listening to the Huckin podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo Wan. Was in Surrey, BC. Now back in the confines of Kingston, Ontario.
And I'm Danny Proby from New West, BC. I was also in Surrey, BC for a little bit. A little hop, skip, and a jump over the bridge. But together, we are your coast-to-coast guide to all things Canadian Ultimate. Now, big announcement in the house. We'll kind of get through this episode a little bit quicker. But Theo, is there anything that you want to say that has nothing else to do with CUC Juniors recap or CUC location announcement?
Go Blue Jays.
You cannot see this because there's no video, but I'm wearing a Blue Jays shirt right now. Did you know that? Could you tell?
Yes, I did. And the Blue Jays are in the playoff hunt. So I had to catch up on all the Blue Jays stuff because I was away watching Frisbee. So go Jays.
Yeah. Go Jays. My biggest news is that Theo and I got to commentate a game together, and the live stream didn't work for like the first few points. And so we rallied and I don't know if you've seen it on the Huckin Instagram, but we did a live on our phone and commentated it from my phone, which I thought was pretty fun. I actually kind of liked it. And they're like, oh, the stream is back up. And I was like, oh, I guess I could go sit behind the desk again and be more formal. But it was very fun. It was awesome to see so many juniors play, so many heartbreaks, so many victories, intense moments, and lots of families supporting. So I'm excited to do the full recap.
Yeah, the thing that the juniors were most excited about is all the jersey trades out here. Because
you're most excited for that.
Yeah, that stuff was like straight heat. Like the seniors trading was like terrible compared to that. Like there were just so many people setting up their markets and just trading. So seniors, you gotta learn from this because it's like they're firing up the trades.
I just don't think adults care to have different jerseys like that.
No. And I don't know if you can hear it. Well, I assume you can hear it in my voice. I think Danny's is a little bit less like hoarse, but I kind of lost my voice over the weekend.
I think I always have a bit of a vocal fry, so I think I sound pretty normal right now. But this is annoyingly just how my voice sounds. Do you hate the sound of your own voice?
I mean, I've heard it so much now that it doesn't annoy me as much. Like when I first heard it, I think it was weird, but yeah. And for this episode, we're only going to be talking CUC juniors. Juniors is the only thing we're talking about this episode specifically, and then we'll talk about seniors in the next episode.
Agreed. So one quick news item. CUC is being hosted in Ottawa for adults and juniors August 11th through 18th. And Waterloo is Masters, and that's July 26th through 28th. So I know that there were some people that were wanting Masters to be played over more days and to kind of have like a legit party and everything like that. So hopefully that will be done this season or this next year rather. But that is the only real news item we have because we just want to blast through juniors.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about the news part is people were complaining also about the date of Masters being like late July. People didn't like that either.
I personally liked it because it gave me time to recover to be able to play senior nationals as well. So for all those people that are double dipping, it's a great schedule. Yeah,
that's fair. All right, we're gonna hit juniors recap main event. Lots to talk about. Picks were made. Someone lost a bet. All that good stuff. Lots of things to celebrate. Big time scores, spirit scores we're going to talk about as well right after the break.
Hey, this is G. Lee, coach of the Wheaties Junior Women and Queen City Bees out of Saskatchewan. You are listening to the Huckin podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
All right, so welcome to your CUC Juniors recap. we had an opening ceremonies kind of on the first day. So lots of junior teams were piling in to kind of walk out on the field, wear their jerseys together. There's some photos being taken. It was a vibe. And then we had the showcase game between the home team Vortex women versus Team Manitoba women. And it was a good game. Like there's lots of big bids. Even the warm up was kind of hype. Like somebody would get like a foot block in the warm up and the crowd would be going crazy already. I think everyone was just very excited for the tournament to happen. And so there was a lot of oohs and ahs and boos and cheers from the audience, which made for a very good atmosphere. But Vortex ended up winning the game 10-6. Now, if you're watching this game on stream, you're going to be like, why are there so many turnovers? And it was extremely windy. I feel like it was quite gusty for almost the entirety of the juniors tournament. And so a lot of throws that would go up that would be normal catchable throws would get caught up and then would turn into big piles of sky battles. And so if you're watching any of the footage, there's definitely a strong wind, especially on that showcase game where it is impacted a little bit by like the stands and the other buildings. It's quite swirly. So it was a very, very good game. Super exciting. It was my first time ever commentating like an actual game properly like that. And it was a good time.
I'm killing it out here, doing it all week, Danny. So good on you for getting your commentating career started. Yeah, that's exciting stuff. So
thanks.
We're going to move to Pool A. And I mean, the news of Pool A is Vancouver Dino is good. Plus 33 differential in pool play. But I will say, give some love to Quebec over here because Quebec City Origine, they get a big win over Nitro, breaking to win on Universe. And then the other news of this pool is Toronto Toro has a bit of a struggle here. They actually get broken to lose on Universe to Nitro, so they finished 4th in the pool.
Yeah, that pool was a bit interesting because there was a moment where we thought we were going to kind of get into a 3-way tie. And then we were streaming Toro versus Origine. And that game, like if Toro was able to come out on top, it would have been quite complicated, but that did not end up happening. In Pool B, we got Fraser Valley Vortex. They ended up winning the pool. But one of the games was quite close, which was our game to watch, I think, of all of pool play, which was Vortex versus Wicked West. And that game was won by Vortex on Universe. So as we assumed it was going to be a good game, it was. So we had Vortex winning on hardcap. RV Brillantes had 7 points in that game and finished with 18 over just pool play alone. And we'll be discussing RV's stats a little bit more later on. Team Manitoba's women's jumps from 4th to 3rd. So a baby upset with a 10-9 win over Richmond Reign. Again, a win on hardcap.
Yeah, the hard cap situation is different in juniors than the senior tournament. So you might hear us talk about that a bit more. We'll go to Pool C, and remember, Pool C, D, and E are the pools that like are not the top 8 teams, so they're trying to fight into the top 8. Hey, give some love to High Tide, New Brunswick. Come on. They get a 12-11 win over Wicked East, so they jump from 4 to 3, and then Montreal Titan wins the pool. I think they were clearly the best team in that Pool C. Their closest game was by 4 points. So Titan showing off the Quebec might there.
And we have Pool D. Vancouver Eclipse originally was like the number 5 millionth seed going into this tournament because they finished 7th overall in the BC Regionals, but they came in as the 14th seed. There was, as we talked about in the preview, a bit of a switch to allow them to be able to play into the bracket that could bump up. Because originally, if they were in Pool E, they would not have had the opportunity for upward mobility in this tournament. And so they ended up winning their pool. So they showed that they were right in requesting something like this. So they were the 3rd seed originally in that pool. They did have a close game versus North Shore Canyon to get the pre-quarter spot. Otherwise, they showed absolute dominance. Newfoundland Storm out here got their first win over Winnipeg's second team, Red River Rebellion, and we love teams getting those dubs.
Yeah, speaking of dubs, hey, a team from Montérégie, Quebec. I hope I said that right. I heard it was Kimes. I still think it's Symes, but it could be Kimes. Anyways, they do really well. They go undefeated on the first day. They get a big 9-8 win over Toronto Uproar. Cassandra Moreau has 4 assists and a goal in the game. And then Cannons, hey, gotta give some love for the Prairie teams. Cannons gets a big 8-6 win over their fellow Prairie squad in Saskatchewan Wheaties. So we got some fun stuff happening in Pool E as well.
So after everything kind of settled in pool play, we had our crossovers. So the top 2 seeds from Pool C and D went to battle the lower seeds from Pool A and B, and then the top seeds in A and B crossed over with each other. So Dino ended up defeating Vortex 13-7 in the 1v1 battle. So Pool A won, Pool B won. Wicked West was 13-10 over Origine in the 2 versus 2 battle. So Pool A2, Pool B2. And then we had the 3s and 4s crossing over with the top of Pool C and D. And we had the 3As and 3Bs went to seed over the second seed from Pool C and Pool D, which is to be expected with Nitro, Helios, and Manitoba Canyon winning. So Manitoba winning over Canyon and Nitro winning over Helios. But the games were close, decided by 3 and 2 points each. And so it just goes to show you that there's a lot of kind of parity in this like middle group, but the seeding in general, besides maybe the Eclipse situation, seemed to be pretty bang on. So the big shock was that the top teams from Pool C and D crossed their way into the top pools to 10 with a big win over Toro, 11-5. So like kind of a blowout, and Eclipse ekes out a 9-6 win. And the other notable result is Uproar climbing out of Pool E to end up in the consolation bracket. So Uproar doing quite well.
Yeah, the Eclipse team was going crazy. We posted that on socials, like how Eclipse was just going crazy out here. So good job on them. In the bracket, the quarters were going to the top seed. So the closest game was Vortex 11-6 over Titan. Otherwise, it was like kind of the top seeds taking control. But hey, semifinals. Danny, you weren't on the call for this, I believe. We were just watching it together, right? The Vortex Wicked semi?
Yeah, I was like pacing back and forth. Like I was like a nervous parent out there watching the semifinal. I'm actually really happy I wasn't calling so that I could be extremely present to be able to be a fan. It was a great game.
I mean, Vortex did take half 7-6. So I think in the first half, from what my perspective, it looked like Vortex was kind of the stronger team, and I saw the Ottawa parents were definitely very nervous. And then Wicked scored 3 in a row. They got the whole other half, and then they like shifted the momentum with 2 breaks. But then it was like that short field. It was the Vortex zone, short field turnover from Wicked, and Vortex immediately punched in on the first throw off the turnover, and it was forcing Universe, and that was like an electric atmosphere at that point. And kudos to Wicked West for working it up on Universe, throwing like what felt like a bajillion passes to score and win that game. That was wild.
It's so hard to be a young player and to play that patiently. And I really want to give props to whoever it is in the West program for sending their team to No Borders for them to play against calm, patient adults. I think that mattered a lot. And I think that really paid off in this win over Vortex, because there's so many times that they could have seen like one of their favorite receivers deep and they could have tried to shoot it, but RV Brillantes is always kind of hunting in the backfield. And so they just worked it up patiently. They waited for Brillantes to poach, and then they hit that receiver under, and kudos to them. Big win, historic win, which meant that they got to punch their ticket to finals. But in the other semifinal, we had Dino against Origine, and it was not close, which was kind of as expected. It was 15-5. They capped off their undefeated run to win 15-6 in the finals. And so Theo and I, again, were on the call for this game. There were moments where we're like, oh, Wicked is playing really well. The Wicked's at this level. But I think that they like mentally beat themselves before the game even started. I think that they can be really proud of a lot of the points that they played in that game. And it just comes to a little bit of composure, a little bit of more like a finishing touch on their offense, because they're quite close to scoring very many times. But the Dino defense is just a little bit relentless. So we had incredible performances throughout the game, but early jitters. Wicked West goes down 1-7, and then Dino ends up taking half 8-2. So Grace Liu balled out 9 assists. It's pretty crazy.
Baller.
You're keeping track, and I like lost space on my sheet. I was like, I think that there was 9. I was trying to count all the A's in the stat line. We also had some athletic blocks. Lauren Sidofang and Jaylee Ma, just like monsters, absolute monsters. And so kind of a blowout, not the most exciting final if you like close games, which I do. Speaking of close games, we had Vortex playing Origin for bronze, and that game was a universe point game where Vortex ended up taking the win. And it is incredibly hard to lose a universe point game in semis, be heartbroken, and then have to rally to play a bronze medal game again. And to find yourself in a universe point type situation and gut it out and actually come out victorious is incredible. But also huge props to Origin because that was also the best finish in their program's history as well.
Yeah, Manitoba comes in 5th, and Eclipse, we already talked about them, but they finished 6th after starting 14th. So big ups to them. In terms of picks, we were pretty close, I'm going to say. We both picked 6 out of the 8 quarterfinalists, and we both picked 3 of the 4 semifinalists and picked the exact finals. Where you reign supreme in this situation, Danny, is that you picked Vortex to finish 3rd, and I picked Manitoba to finish 3rd. So,
yeah, it still wasn't good enough for me to win the contest. Spoiler alert. If you saw me playing CUCs on day 1, I was wearing Theo's jersey for Local 613 while I was warming up, and in between games, I actually went to go watch Local 613 play against TT. And I have a lot of friends on TT, and I'm wearing a Local 613 jersey, and they're like, get out of here with that crap. But I was like, I lost a bet. I don't know. I don't know what to say. So,
yeah, it happens. Give some love to scoring leaders out here. So if you watch the tournament, you know that this person was lighting up the scoreboard. So RV Brillantis, 27 assists, 13 goals to finish with tournament high in this division, 40 points, 12 more than Grace Lee, who had 28. 2 Wicked West players were in the top 5, though. So Lillianne Shannon, who was a baller in the deep space, especially, and Kate Clement, they had 27 and 25 respectively. And then Lauren Roberts from Wheaties, yo, Saskatchewan, what's up? 25 points in the top 10. That's always cool. So 8 teams.
I do need to say, Lauren Roberts is from Victoria. And so she was a pickup.
Oh,
for
boo.
Wheaties, there's 2 players from, I know.
That just ruined my whole point that I was trying to make.
I know. But well, I mean, Victoria is not exactly like a juniors ultimate hub. So it's still cool. Yeah. Like they're out there grinding. I think a lot of times they play in open ultimate situations because there's not enough junior girls playing. And so the Wheaties team was able to pick up 2 of the Victoria kids and they balled out, and I'm really appreciative of Saskatchewan Ultimate for allowing them to play. All right. There's 8 teams represented in the top 10 of scoring. Dino also had 2 players on that list. In general, we'll talk about Spirit a little bit. Wheaties, congratulations. They win Spirit with 12.71 overall score. And to kind of let the audience know, 10 means you played like a good average game. So anything below 10 means that there was some negative stuff, and anything above 10 means that they were kind of above and beyond. I was speaking with G. Lee in the adult CUCs, and she was saying that if her adult team that she was coaching wins Spirit, she would have won Spirit in all 3 tournaments because her team won Spirit at Masters and Juniors. And so she's like, hey, maybe see.
G is
spoiler
spirited.
alert, they did not. Oh, G's awesome.
Tough. Yeah, tough.
They don't win Spirit, but they were spirited.
Yeah.
Well, we're big fans. So Dino comes first in tournament and second in Spirit, which we really, really love. So they do have 1.83 in fouls and body contact, because I know that they are quite a physical team, or they like to kind of get those like run through blocks and lay out Ds. And even if it's clean, sometimes players feel like that contact is a bit much. But they get a 2.5 in attitude, self-control, and communication. So obviously they're just wonderful human beings that are balling out on the field. Eclipse and Manitoba finish with an 8.83 to tie for last. So, yeah, it's we don't want to put people on blast here, but it is something that we need to be aware of. So if you're consistently getting things less than 2 in a category, it is something that you as a leadership or you as a team should look at. Theo will allow you to give a little bit more color.
Yeah. So for Eclipse, they had 6 games recorded for their Spirit standings, and they received scores below 10 for 4 of them. Manitoba got 4 scores below 10. They also received a 4 from a team. Danny, do you see that very often? It was 0 for rules and 0 for fairness. So, I mean, that's not something you see every day in a Spirit score thing.
I think that if you do give a 0, or a 4 in any category, you do need to talk to the tournament director about it. And I'd heard of a couple incidences where that had happened. And sometimes when athletes are doing the spirit scores, they just maybe came off a tough loss, and sometimes they are feeling a bit salty about something, and it does impact how you perceive things. Or maybe like there was one incident and you let that color the kind of whole game. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but that does happen. So that's why you look for trends. So if Manitoba was getting multiple 4s, 5s, 6s total for scores, then it would be a concern. But sometimes if it's an outlier, you're like, either there's a mistake or this is just kind of like a bad game, or I'm not really sure, but it's trends that I look for.
Yeah, that looked like a crossover game, so I'm sure that was a pretty important game. So, I mean, also they received 9s in like the other games, plus a 10 and a 12. So that 4 kind of pulls them down a little bit. 8 teams are below 10, so but some of them are pretty close, like 9.86, that kind of stuff. High Tide gets a 10, but receives 1.57 in fouls. So you also want to look at certain categories. We're not going to talk too much more about Spirit for this division, but you want to look at the categories and kind of see where teams are getting like certain scores. And you can, this is all publicly available, so you can look at it if you're interested.
It is interesting that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams below 10 are from BC.
Hey, Danny said it, not me.
Oh my
That's
Lord. BC, what are we up to?
That's all I'm going to say. Hey, the BC person said BC got those Spirit scores.
Moving on to... It's all good. No, it's not all good. We should be better. Okay, moving on to the Open Division. Pool A, Origine shocked the pool. They go from the number 4 seed and 7 overall to win first in this pool. This pool was crazy from the get-go. There were 2 Universe wins. They break Ignite to win 11-10, win on Hardcap by 1 over Vortex as well. That's also on our Instagram if you want to see that point. Noah, is it Brouillet Ferrer?
Yeah, I think you got it.
Is that how you'd say it?
Yeah. Well, we'll
All
give
right,
it to him.
cool. Had a combined 9 points in those 2 wins. Team Manitoba had a day 1 to forget. So they were missing what we are told is their best player on the Monday, and they went 0-3, which is not what anyone was expecting. So the defending champs starting off with a 15-14 or 14-15 loss to Vortex. But yeah, it was tough to watch. Again, catch it on our Instagram. It's pretty hype. And the other 2 losses they had were by a couple. But that is not the end of this Team Manitoba, as you will hear later.
Not the end of the story. Pool B, Dino goes undefeated. So they're also pretty dominant, but they have a close 10-7 win over Titan out of Montreal. Toronto Toro jumps a seeding spot, finishing second in the pool with a 12-11 Universe win. And over Titan. Harry Norris had 8 points and Mathieu Houle had 7. So that was probably a spicy game. Too bad it wasn't filmed. Tough for Titan though, because they went from second in the pool to finish 4th. They lost games by 3, 2, and 1. Oh, that is tough. That is tough for Montreal right here. Yeah,
Devastating.
that's devastating news.
In Pool C, Canyon gets the top pre-quarters final spot, going 3-0 and scoring 40 goals to just 17 against them. Uproar takes down an upstart high team 10-9 to get the second crossover spot. And Kimes, is that how you said that they said it was said? And you think it's
Someone
Symes?
said it that.
Kimes,
I don't know.
Symes. Your team had some close scores in their CUC debut, but they do end up coming last. So a strong start, but didn't quite close out any games.
Yeah. So Pool D, I want to give some love to the competition director, Dean Wright, for the seeding in general, except for a couple teams, that Eclipse kind of shocking some things here. But this pool went exactly to seed. Universe Point Madness, Chaos beating Fire Pants to take the pool. Kind of cool to see 2 teams that are playing First Nationals going at it. And yeah, this won't be the last we hear of those teams. I hope that these programs continue to build up, but that's what happened in Pool D.
For Pool E, Eclipse was seeded number 22 and 3rd in their pool, but they end up winning the whole thing with a plus 21 point differential. So Eddie Zhu with 13 assists and 1 goal in pool play. Helios also seeded 4th in the pool and ends up 2nd with a plus 19 score differential. So the 2 BC squads really stepping up big. I know I was just kind of throwing some shade on some BC squads, but now I'm going to say some good stuff. Good job.
I mean, the BC love is going to continue because in Pool F, Vintage the last seed in the tournament, obviously last in their pool. They finished first in this Pool F. 2 players in double digits through pool play. Look away, Cannon fans, because your team goes from the top seed to the bottom seed in that pool. So that's tough, but teams got to bounce back from that adversity out here.
So in terms of the crossover, the A1 and B1 play each other. And so Origin actually ekes out a 13-12 win over Dino, which was kind of like a surprising and well, kind of unsurprising. I don't know, like when I was watching Dino earlier in the tournament, they looked a little rough around the edges. And so them losing a close game didn't necessarily shock me, but it also didn't mean that they're out. So it didn't really end up mattering too much. Ignite beat Toro 10-8. Vortex, Nitro, Titan, and Team Manitoba all win their crossovers to prevent themselves going into the lower pools. Nitro beat an upstart Firepants team 11-10. So both technically new teams, close games. We love it. There was a big rebound, as we said earlier, for Team Manitoba. Other things to note: Vintage and Eclipse make their way up, defeating Storm and Kimes respectively, and the former was on a win on Universe after Storm had scored 2 straight. So, showing some grit out here.
No, bracket time. Look away, cover your ears, Quebec City fans, because you had a big run. You went undefeated in pool play. You also win the crossover against Dino, one of the favorites of the tournament, so you're feeling pretty good. And then you draw Manitoba, the defending champions, in quarters. Tough, because Manitoba wins on Universe 11-10, so ends the championship hopes of Origin. Vortex gets quote-unquote an upset based on seeding over Toro 13-10. The other 2 go to seed as Ignite and Dino win. And in semis, Manitoba continues their run here. They defeat Vortex 11-8, and Dino gets a convincing win, I'm going to say that, over Ignite 14-6. Danny, we had a chance to be on the field for the final. What is your thoughts on what you saw out there? Because one team really left no doubt on the field.
Dino looked elite, and I cannot say the same thing for when I watched them earlier in that tournament. I don't know if it's like the crowd, the hometown crowd kind of gave them that energy. But I think that their decision making seemed to improve exponentially from day 1 to day 3. And so they just looked like they were in another class at that moment. And Team Manitoba, I think, had just had such an up and down tournament. And I think they got spooked early on with a couple miscues. And I know that we were speaking with their coaches and they said day 1, just couldn't catch the Frisbee, which is what we saw. Day 2, they could catch the Frisbee. And in day 3, they were catching the Frisbee. And then all of a sudden in the final, they got a little spooked again and just had a hard time, honestly, just making simple completions. And they were never really able to kind of get it back.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm impressed with the most is I counted 16 players, I believe, getting on the board for Dino. That's really impressive that so many people are contributing. Miles Wong has 4 goals. He played really well. I saw him handle and just do a lot of things for that team. But it's just really cool to see lots of players getting in, and not just getting in, but also making contributions. So kudos to Dino for winning. We're not going to say the final score. But Dino, congrats on winning. Hey, more Universe action though happening in this tournament. When we were announcing this game, Danny was trying to get someone to check in on the bronze game, and no one was really taking the bait. I will say that. So we kind of have to figure out who won, and then Dean Wright did tell us. So congrats to Ottawa for the win. Roth Mooring scores the final point, and he had 8 points in the contest, so 5 assists and 3 goals. In the All-Quebec battle, Origin takes down Titan in consolation play, which avenges their 2 losses to them on the year. We talked about Eclipse, and we're going to talk about them again because they came 9th beating Fire Pants, and they went undefeated. High Tide comes 11th, but I want to circle back to the Eclipse thing. I know someone said this in our feedback thing survey that we put out on our Instagram, but and I think in the comments, like, how does a team go into a tournament not have a chance of winning? Danny, I'm putting you on the spot here. Do you like that some teams don't have a chance at winning? Or should everyone have a chance at winning, even though you're seated like 22nd, you know?
Nobody likes the games that are 15-0. So I understand the thought process of wanting to do a bracket like this to invite more teams that are developmental and give them more meaningful games. So that's the intention of this whole thing. If there was a way where you could have like an opt-in, like you can apply for the developmental division at CUCs versus the competition division, and you could decide what you wanted, maybe that would be a way to kind of navigate that. Because I think it was hard. Like, you're the 7th seed out of BC. Like, how do you not put that team ranked low? And I understand, but like the BC region was just kind of like a little wacky this year. And so for them, originally not having a chance to get better than 9th would have been devastating, because as we saw, they ended up finishing 6th. And that's just like such a big jump. So if there was a way to opt in to the developmental bracket, I think that would solve that issue. And I know that that's a headache. But Theo, what do you think? I'm going to put you back on the spot.
There should be a disclaimer that says if you finish last in your region or close to last and you choose to opt into the competitive, you might get blown out. And you accept that that might be your fate. But I do hear what you're saying about the like a Dino team doesn't want to play a team that's kind of more developmental, that's going to just win 15-0. Like, it's not fun for anyone, to be honest. I don't think the team that's getting beat 15-0 is learning that much, because they're probably just getting frustrated. And if those players are playing against have been playing for a while, it's just not close, right? So, I don't know, it's tough for sure, especially in juniors where there's a lot more teams and you just want to get participation. So, yeah, if you want to have a chance at winning, I think just do better in your region. That's all I got to say about it. Just do better in your region.
Speaking of doing better, we got our scoreboard leaders, Chain Reactions. Rowan Jameson had 31 points. That's 10 assists and 21 goals. Ralph Mooring from Ignite had the most assists with 23 and finished with 27 points overall, so a big shooter for that squad. And 9 teams are represented in the top 10 of scoring. Ignite was the only team with 2 people on that list. I want to give a shout out to Anant and Eddie Zoo for both of them being on this list. They're both good kids who coach the next generation. I'm sure there's more people on this list that coach the next generation. I just know those 2. So shout out to them for being on this top list. In terms of spirit, we have Blaze finishing with a 14.33.
That
overall,
can't be real.
Which again,
like, is that real?
The average is 10. Okay, well, we could look through.
Yeah, I'm going to look at it right now.
Whether one team just inflated them.
No.
But they do have
This is crazy. The scores I got were 12, 15, 14, 14, 16, and 15. Like, they had 2 games where they got
it was every
attitude
team.
4. Like, that's, good attitude, Blaze. We love it, but that's pretty high score.
Wow. If you can hear any noise in my background, my dog is just scratching her chin. So apologies. Indy. Yeah, pretty incredible. Good job, Blaze. 7 teams out of 24 finished below 10, with 4 teams below 9. So I know Theo likes to put the actual specific names of those teams on blast. I will say that 3 out of 4 of them are from BC.
Oh my gosh.
I know that there are just a lot of BC teams at this tournament too. Yeah. That are all in the top, but it's not an excuse. So Dino finishes with a score of 10 overall. So generally speaking, a team that's quite physical, finishing average is actually quite good. Vortex has a score we've never really seen before with 6.43 overall. And I know that they had one specific score that really brought them down. But they did get a lot of 1s and stuff in other categories. So just something that I think I've talked about this before, that program has a reputation, and sometimes that leads to some biased scoring against them. And I spoke to their coaches kind of about it, and they said that they felt like the games were fine and they didn't hear too much about it. And then I spoke to observers that were especially at that game during that low score, and they said they thought that the game was fine on both sides. So if you have any more insight, slide into ye old DMs. Against the spirit scores don't necessarily mean anything if you don't want them to, but if you are the type of team and player that wants to use this data to critically assess how you're showing up on the field and how you're showing up as an opponent to other teams, I think it's a good opportunity, especially if there are trends.
Yeah, that's, you said it the best. I mean, the fouls were the seemingly the issue there, at least from the scores. But as we say before, I remember talking to another team. This was during seniors, but when you have a reputation, often, I'm not going to say this happened in this case, but often the spirit score is determined before the game starts, if that makes sense. Because you're like, oh, this team is known for fouling. We're just going to give them, we know it's going to happen. And so if one thing happens, it might like be like, oh, that's confirmation bias of like what we know to be true. So once again, I didn't see most of Vortex Open's game, so I can't speak to that. But they did get like some low scores for fouls in general. So there is potentially a trend there. So anyways, that we kind of leave that on a sad note. I don't like that. But yeah, I don't like that.
I do have one thing I want to say about the Vortex team is when they were in the semi versus Manitoba. I think that game was getting quite physical and maybe even chippy, and the Vortex team did call a spirit timeout and they brought everybody in, and it actually did seem to calm down the tone of that game. And so I want to acknowledge that because I think that's a really positive thing that I saw that this team do. So there's that. Also, we didn't really talk about this, but there's a quarterfinal game. It was Origin versus Manitoba, and I went and watched the universe on that game. And
I know you're gonna
that's
bring
also
up. Yeah.
on our Instagram. That's also on our Instagram. So if you want to see it, but it was wild. Okay. So Origin scores and now it's universe, and Manitoba is starting on offense and they're working their way down and whatever. There's somebody thinks they're in and then spikes it and celebrates. And then the observer was like very clearly being like waving their hands, not in. And then they're clearly like counting and doing the hand motion, like 10, 9 for the other team to pick it up. I've had different people say from like objective people that aren't necessarily on one team or another say they were so in. And I've had other people say they were so not in. And so clearly controversial call. Anyway, don't spike until you see the hands of the observers go up. Theo, you want to interject? Well,
just like we saw that with Abby Hacko at College Nationals, and I think it's happened many a time before. So yeah, it was when I was watching it live, I couldn't figure out what it was because you were obviously there filming it, and I was like, I think still in Ontario trying to figure out what was going on. So pretty wild sequence. We didn't go through the picks, and Danny, let's just congratulate each other because we got every single quarterfinalist correct. Like that's crazy.
Theo, I'm not done talking about that game.
Oh, you're not done? I thought you were done. Okay, no. All right.
No, you okay, so Theo, if you're going to put up your finger because you want to interject, I assume that I still have more to say. So the drama does not end at this call.
I can't actually see you right now, Danny, so it's actually made this podcast recording very difficult. It's the laggiest recording I've ever seen of you, so I actually can't see you right now. I'm going in blind.
All right. Well, I'm not done. So
keep going.
It's a turnover. So Origin picks up the disc and then like immediately turn it basically on like a swing, or I don't know what was happening. And then the Manitoba player picks up the disc, fumbles the disc. I can't even remember, something weird. To me, it looked like they picked up the disc, put down the disc, then called timeout. But I heard it was more like a fumbled the disc, it dropped, called timeout. I don't really know what actually happened. Anyways, drama happened. They didn't have a timeout. And so then there's that, which, I mean, the rule is it's not a turnover. It's just an add of 3 to the stall count. But now it's just like, it's feeling a little crazy on the field. And so then anyways, Manitoba gets the disc. That player ends up picking it up, throwing it in for the goal, and then Manitoba wins on universe. Just a wild sequence of events for a team that had a crazy journey. You can now speak, Theo.
Yeah, I legitimately, you were the laggiest person for the whole recording. So I've been going in blind. We like to be honest with our audience. So I was just literally waiting for any moment to like say something. So
My internet's fine. It's your internet.
Oh, it's definitely my internet. I will blame the Kings internet today. I don't know what's going on. But as I was saying, we got all the quarterfinalists right. So we got to give love to that. We also got all the semifinalists right, which is kind of crazy. And I had the 2 finalists correct. I just had the wrong order. And I realized none of us picked Dino. So like, I think they were teasing us a little bit in Instagram DM or comment, I think. So that was that. You had Ignite over Manitoba. So you did have Manitoba in the final. So, hey, sometimes we get it wrong. And Dino proved us wrong and celebrated to victory.
Yeah, to be fair, I just couldn't, in my heart, go Dino for my picks. And I feel like that would, like, I've been accused of being a homer, and I let that peer pressure get to me.
You gotta go with your heart.
I voted against my little homies. So shout out to Dino and the Prime Ultimate Club for a very convincing nationals performance on both the open and the women's divisions. Incredible stuff out there.
Even their second teams, right? Like their second teams finish in the top 8, but there was a lot of regional diversity out here. So Montreal both being in the top 8, Quebec City as well, Manitoba. So there's a lot going on. Toronto, Toronto 7th in open, 10th in women, so junior women. So, I got to tell, hey, Toronto, we got to get back up on the map here, because even you saying it, I remember us talking to the tournament, like Toro women's not making the quarters. That was surprising to you, because normally you see them out there.
Yeah, and like we'll talk about a senior recap in our next episode, but obviously Toronto is doing good things. They win 2 divisions and place second in another division. So
spoiler.
But we got to get that influx of junior talent feeding those systems. And so that's all I got to say. Vancouver's future looking pretty strong right now.
Yeah, future looking bright out here. Thank you for following us on the socials. Thank you for engaging with all the content. Like when we posted that first recap, there was a lot of love out there in the universe, and we appreciate that a lot. Jeff Bell.
Yeah, shout out to Theo for kind of making that happen. And for Jeff Bell, and Bell. John Hayduke for helping gather content for us as well.
Yeah, helping get it to us that night. People seem to really like it. So I'm not saying that we're going to do this for college nats, because the resources photo-wise is going to be a lot less. But you can expect power rankings from college. Hey, I've seen tryout things come out, at least on the east side of the country. So Ontario, Quebec teams are putting out their tryouts. People were trying to get us to post tryouts during nationals, and unfortunately we could not do that because we got to focus on CUC. But now that that's over, we'll focus on university out here. So, hey, I heard UBC men's might be coming again, but that might just be a rumor in the Frisbee verse.
I don't know why they want to do that to themselves. It's so expensive to fly out there, and like the weather, like it's just like muck fest. I would absolutely not do that if I were them, but I am not them, thus I cannot say. So I could ask Ari, because he's, I think,
he has to apply again, doesn't he?
Sorry?
Does he have to apply again? Because I know UBC women's, there's applications out, so people got to apply.
Yep. They reapplied, re-interviewed, or whatever. Yeah, so Ari will be coaching again.
Yeah, that's breaking news, but let me say, I like that approach. So teams out there listening, having to get your coaches to reapply, I like that, because then if you don't like what was happening, you don't have to stick with it. You can try some new blood. So
couldn't agree more. Set a precedent, set a standard.
Yeah.
Even though it's like a volunteer position and coaches don't get paid, it's still a good practice for coaches to kind of have to own the things that they did well and own the things that they would change from the previous season.
Accountability.
Well, I'm going to be accountable, and I'm going to head over to the subscriber only section. I'm going to talk a little bit about my commentating experience. It was very fun. But yeah, subscribe. I mean, follow us on Instagram, which I think most people do. We really upped our follows.
I was loving that
over this whole CUCs, but we really appreciate all of you for engaging with us. And juniors that are heading off to college, have a good time, play Ultimate, And yeah, we look forward to seeing you all on the field. And then we're going to have our next episode be a CUC senior recap. It's going to be a big one. So that should be coming out in the next couple days as well.
Peace.
Bye.